Let's take a look at our notes today. We're going to talk about two gentlemen in the Old Testament that were amazingly used by God. And just like these saints that I saw slip into eternity, men and women who've persevered. They've gone through all kinds of obstacles in their lives, but they overcame and they stayed true. And if I were to cast a vote for one who had a tenacious faith and ended well, I would vote for the one that we're studying in our devotions, Job. Job. He's in the Old Testament. He did everything right. Did you know that he even repented for his kids? I thought, this guy is quite a dad. In fact, let's read this together in our notes, up on the board rather. Read this with me. Go. Early in the morning, he would sacrifice a burnt offering for each of them, thinking, perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. This was Job's regular custom. I thought, he even repented for his kids. Did a sacrifice for his kids just in case they cursed God in their hearts. I thought, wow. I thought if I did that for my kids, God would stop me and say, Wayne, you don't have time or money for the amount of stuff your kids have done. So I thought, well, I won't do it. But Job was such a righteous man. He did everything right. But still, not a chance in the world would he have expected to encounter what he was about to encounter. He would be pummeled by the devil in his faith, his family, his physical health. Everything would be taken away from him. Not because he did something wrong, but because we have an adversary that never takes vacation. He had his sights on Job and his crosshairs in the scope of his rifle on Job. And he begins to attack him. Peter, in the book of 1 Peter chapter 5, talks about this adversary. And let's read it. It says this, go. Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. He wants to devour your future so you have no future. You exist and you manage from day to day, but you lose the very purpose for which God created you and put you on this earth. He wants to devour your future, and he doesn't take a vacation. And in this season, he had Job in his sights, in his crosshairs. And we're going to read a story about this man. Now, you'll have some scriptures in your notes, but I'd like you to read them off the board because I added a few more. And you're going to see in each scripture a line that repeats again and again and again. See if you can catch it. Let's read the first one here about what is taking place in Job's life. Would you read it with me? Go. One day, when Job's sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, and a messenger came to Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys were grazing nearby, and the Sabeans attacked and made off with them. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. So he's got his donkeys plowing, his servants getting ready to put in the harvest, and the livestock are stolen and his servants killed. So his stock is going down. His finances are plummeting. And the next one, here it is. Let's read the next one. Go. While he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, the fire of God fell from the heavens and burned up the sheep and the servants, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. Now, as the first guy's speaking, another guy cues up and says, hey, by the way, there was a lightning storm when your sheep were out there, and now you have barbecued lamb chops everywhere. What? Yep, and your servants are dead. Now watch this. You'll see the phrase. Let's read the next one. Go. While he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, the Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties and swept down on your camels and made off with them. They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one left to tell you. I mean, the devil doesn't even let Job come up for air before another bearer of bad news cuts in line, eager to compound the last fracture with another bone-crushing tragedy that will affect Job's life. But it's not even done yet. Let's read the next verse. Go. But while he was still speaking, yet another messenger came and said, your sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, when suddenly a mighty wind swept in from the desert and struck the four corners of the house. It collapsed on them, and they are dead. And I am the only one escaped to tell you. I thought, man, this is crazy. Your kids are having dinner at a sibling's house, and Hurricane Anna comes in, wipes them out. He's not even done yet. He's going to come down, Job himself, with boils and physical infirmities. And I'm thinking, Job redefines what it means to have a bad day. This is nuts. By this time, I'd be ready to jump off a cliff, wouldn't you? This is it. I'm done. I'm not taking any more of this stuff. But I want to read to you the next verse. It's not in your notes, but I'm just going to read it out of the scriptures. Listen to his response. Mine would be very different, but here's his response. This will amaze you. At this, Job got up, tore his robe, and shaved his head. Then he fell to the ground in worship. And he said, naked came I from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gives, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And through all of this, Job did not sin, nor did he blame God. This is crazy amazing. I mean, I'd be blaming everybody. My wife, my kids, my dog. I'd blame everybody. You. I'd blame everybody. But we have a tendency to do that, don't we? We bite everybody's head off. We get mad at God. Just like if you get yelled at by your boss, you go home and the first thing you do is yell at your wife. The wife slaps the boy punches his sister, the sister kicks the dog bites the cat bites the head off the doll. It just happens like that. I'd suggest if you ever get yelled at by your boss, just go straight home, bite the head off the doll. Saves everybody in between. But we have a tendency to blame everybody, God included. But it says here, he did not sin, nor did he blame God. Further on down in the story, because he's got boils, his wife can't take it anymore. And she's about to turn to Job and say, Job, why don't you just curse God and die? I looked at that wife and I thought, why didn't you take her with the storm and wind and all of the other stuff? But instead of getting upset at his wife, he just turns to his wife and says, shall we accept only blessings from God and not adversity? I thought, what a guy. He gets my vote. He gets my vote that for the person that when you face adversity and challenges, this is how you respond. Later on in the story, we find Job saying, I don't know what's going on, but I know this. I know my Redeemer lives. I thought, God, help me to be more like him, but I'm not. I'm more like this next one that we're going to take a look at. He went through the same kinds of adversities, but his response is quite different. His name, Elijah. Elijah's in 1 Kings 18 when up at Mount Carmel, he has a showdown at the OK Corral with about 850 false prophets. And almost single-handedly, he defeats all of them. I mean, he's a superhero of sorts. I'm sure people just thought, man, he's a superhero. However, at the same time, the king's wife, whose name is Jezebel, you see, those false prophets were leaders trying to lead the people into immorality, and there they would make money off of the immoral lifestyle of brothels, etc. And Jezebel was endorsing this because she could make some money for the king's wages and taxes. And when it was all kiboshed by this Elijah, she was livid and steaming mad. Even till this day, her name is synonymous with immorality, a Jezebel spirit, or that woman's a Jezebel, or whatever. And that's that one. It comes from 1 Kings chapter 18 and 19. Well, she was so mad at Elijah, she called him up on his cell phone and said, listen, I don't like your kind, and I'm coming after you, and I'm going to do you in. You're done. Well, that's just a woman saying that to a prophet who's a superhero. But what is his response? Well, let's take a look at his response. Let's read it. Go. Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. He went a day's journey into the wilderness and came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might. I thought, that's my man. I relate to him. However, he said, I'm done. I can't take this anymore. You asked me to go against this impossible odds, and I have to fight all of this out. I'm tired, and then this woman wants to kill me. I'm done. I'm just done. I'm going to die. And in just one or 2 minutes of her discussion against him, he turns from a superhero into a super zero. I'm done, he said to God. I'm finished. I'm not going to be Superman. I don't want to be Superman anymore, he said. I just want to be Clark Kent. That Jezebel is the kryptonite. I ain't going to face her. And God shows up and speaks to him under that broom bush, and let's see what it says. Would you read it with me? Go. Then a voice said to him, what are you doing here? He replied, I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death. I am the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too. I'm tired of being Superman. I resign. For the next 3 or 4 days, God tries to get him to change his mind. In fact, the meetings go all day. The therapy sessions go so long. God has to order out pizza for him. It's delivered by a bird, gives him some stuff. He has Papa's Pizza delivered because the Ho'oponopono is going to take quite a while. The second day, the third day, he tries to get Elijah to change his mind. Elijah just refuses. I'm done. I'm done. I've made up my mind. I'm done. And so what does God have to do? Let's take a look at God's response to this prophet. Read it with me. Go. The Lord said to him, go back and anoint Elisha, the son of Shaphat, to succeed you as, what is God saying? You're done. Pick up your pink slip. I got somebody else. I thought, wow, he must have really been depressed. Did you know when Job hung in there, the Bible says at the end of Job's life, God gave him twice as much as what he had in the beginning. Elijah gets no severance pay. He has to hand the baton off. And guess what? If you read about that, Elisha, his successor, did twice as much, 2 times as many miracles as Elijah. You know what I thought? Elijah, that 2 times belonged to you. But he couldn't snap out of depression. You know, if you honestly page through the Bible, you will find other men and women that God used in mighty ways that wrestled with their humanity. And some became so depressed they were suicidal. That's right. Not only Elijah, Jeremiah was another one who was so tired and fed up with all of the stuff coming at him that he said, I'm done, take my life. Jonah, when God brought him back to go and preach to the Ninevites after being swallowed by that great fish, he preached to him, and then he said this, now, Lord, take away my life, because it's better for me to die than to live. slumped into it. And another name that you might not recognize, the name is William Wilberforce. Changed the world by ridding Britain of the slave trade that it was engaged in, going over to Africa, kidnapping people, selling them into slavery. He was given an assignment by God to kibosh that whole thing. It was like going against Britain itself. He did it, but that assignment from God took such a toll on him physically and emotionally that if you read the history of William Wilberforce, at the end of his life, you'll find that he could only get out of bed with the help of opiates and barbiturates. He was reeling and languishing in his struggle. And I look at this and I think, I can relate more to Elijah than to Job because I can relate to that frailty. And what I'm about to share with you is sort of a scan over my past 6 years. Because in the last 6 years, on the outside, I'm still that jovial kind of guy, but on the inside, I'd been wrestling quite a bit. Let me open chapter 1 for you and relate to you what was going on. Sometimes people think pastors are like Superman. They have to have that blue suit on with the red S. And because you got to deal with that suicide, and then over here, this person dying, and this one here, my kid's going bazonkers, you got to fix that. Oh, by the way, I've got some problems here. And we all have problems, but pastors are sort of expected to be Superman all the time. And you can never be Clark Kent. So you always have to keep the suit on. Even Superman had phone booths that he could visit and come out and rest for a while. I remember I was in Kona when we were on the Big Island, and our kids wanted to go to Hapuna Beach for a couple of days, so we decided to take a little break. So we went over there, and while I was there, I got a call from a lady that said, my husband's in the Hilo Medical Center. He's in the hospital. Come and pray for him. And I said, I'm over here on the other side of the island. I'm with my kids. We're going to be here for a couple of days. She said, you don't understand. My husband's in the hospital, and I want you to come and pray for him. I said, well, let me get, one of the church was still small, so we didn't have other pastors. But I said, let me get another leader to pray. She said, you're the pastor. You need to be praying for him. You need to come here and pray. I said, I can't. What she didn't know is what we know now, that if I did pray for him, he would see Jesus. But I said, I can't right now. And she got so livid, she slammed the phone down. And the husband recuperated, he was fine. But when I came back, she had notified me that she's leaving the church because you didn't pray for my husband. So I said, ouch, yeah, I know, but gosh. Sometime later, I was over in Australia, and we had a pretty long week of crusades. So I teach 3 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, a little break, and then a crusade at night. And I did that in Sydney, then Melbourne, and then to Perth. And in Perth, the evening crowd for the crusade is 12,000. And so 5,000 in Sydney and about 3,000 in Melbourne. And you're doing that throughout the week, so 5 days, and then travel in between. So by the time I was done, I was dog tired. I was so fatigued after a week. I was actually looking forward to the plane ride home because I would have 9 hours. I could put on some headphones and just go to sleep. So I finally boarded the airplane, and because I'm what they call a million-mile flyer, because I've flown so much, if there's a first-class seat, I just automatically get bumped up. So 80% of the time, sometimes 90%, I'll just be in first class. So I was up in first class, and I was so tired. But because I had so much adrenaline in me from doing the whole week, I couldn't get to sleep. I try, and I toss, and I just sit there, and my mind is still active. Well, I thought, I need to get some sleep. Well, the flight attendant came down. She had a bottle of white wine. I said, I think I'll take a glass of one of those. So she said, okay, and I thought, I'm just going to gobble this down and go to bed. Maybe it'll help me. And just when I had my hand on that, someone tapped me on the shoulder, and I looked around. The guy said, hey, are you Pastor Wayne Cordeiro? You're on TV, aren't you? I said, yeah. He said, if you're Pastor Wayne Cordeiro and you're supposed to be this pastor, then what are you doing in first class? You should be back there. Someone else should be in you. You should have given your seat away. And what are you doing drinking that wine? I wanted to pull out his hair and punch in his eyes. But instead I said, could you just let me sleep, please? And he said, whoa. And he walked off, and I looked, and he's over there sitting in first class too. I thought, you get back there and let someone else come up. And I thought, it's when you try to be Clark Kent is when you get nailed. So a lot of times pastors never become Clark Kent because they have to be ready all the time for whatever. But you're still going to hit kryptonite because you're human and you get tired. Well, 6 years ago, started a very tough season. Our church had grown, some of you that were around, to about 12,000, 13,000. And because we couldn't fit anymore in Barrington, we just asked satellites to go out and take 200 here, 300 there. And it was great in the beginning. We'd grown so much that after a while, you make a few good decisions and the church's finances are strong. Magazines are following and stalking you for articles. Awards are coming your way. And you get enamored with that at first, but underneath, you're Clark Kent. It ain't about you. But we started sending some things out, but right there at the peak, my dad passed away, and that took a huge toll on me. And on the outside, you just keep going, but on the inside, you're wrestling. And then my daughter, Abby, just a time in her life, she goes to college at my alma mater, and it's a Bible college. She got kicked out for some activity. And I thought, oh, no. And then she started living a lifestyle that was a little not the most moral. And she's fabulous now. I mean, she's come to Christ. She has a fabulous Christian husband. She's a wonderful mom. But at that time, that slice of her life, she was kind of going sideways. Well, Anna and I are wrestling with that. And then at the same time, while that's still going on, I get diagnosed with heart problems, and I have 5 blockages. And the doctor looked at it and said 3 are 99% blocked, and if you don't get that taken care of now, you won't be around much longer. I was on the airplane that week going to Stanford for a very delicate surgery that had to go in and open those things up with some stents. I went to Oregon to just kind of rest because I was burnt out, have heart problems, got problems in my family. Just then, while that's still going on, the president of my alma mater, where my daughter got kicked out of, comes to me and says, we're in trouble. We're financially bankrupt. This is probably our last graduating class, and we're going to have to shut down. I said, no, you can't do that. We've got to build some leaders. He said, well, if you can do something with it, fine, but we're going to shut it down. I said, whoa, let me talk to my staff. So I came back here and I said, will you let me go and turn this thing around? And we'll use it as a part of our ministry and train leaders, but it's going to take 3 years. Can you keep everything maintained and strong? And I'll fly back here once a month or so, but you got to kind of let me run with it for a while. They said, no problem. So I go up there, and what I don't know is that the college had been going in the hole every month, $110,000 for 3 years. There were over $3 million in the red. The first meeting I had was with the bank, and they came to notify me that our credit was cut. That's how we started. So I've got to I've never worked harder in my life. I had to let go 70% of the faculty and rehire and rebuild and raise $3 million. So 3 years went by, and what I didn't know was during that time, 4,000 people had migrated out of New Hope here. So I thought, it's time to get back home. And when I did come back home, something had shifted in the DNA of New Hope, and some of the basics had been compromised. In fact, I had to immediately let go of 2 staff that had been sleeping together. So I cut that immediately, let another one go for an unforgiveness problem. And there was just some things that we had to change. There was an unaccountability and an independent spirit. And so we continued to decentralize. 2,000 more leave. Now, as that's going on, for the first time in history, we go into the red as a church. While we're still trying to figure out what to do because we're laying off staff to stay afloat, a huge rain happens, a storm, and the roof caves in at Farrington. That's on a Friday. We have services Saturday. We have to reroute all our people next door to the gymnasium, which is arid and hot. And we stay there for a little bit. As that's going on, I'm traveling and I break my leg. And I can't stop because I got speaking to do at these conferences. So I'm limping on a wrapped, broken leg. And I didn't know it was broken. I just knew it hurt like crazy to walk on it. So I have ice on it, and I'm walking with this ice pack that I duct taped to my leg. While I'm there, we had hired a staff person to help me. While I'm there, I got news that he had been in an immoral relationship with the secretary at his other church, and he was to be dismissed immediately. So now I'm thinking, I got a busted leg, and this guy is doing this, and this is nuts. So I come back and get it x-rayed, and the doctor says, yeah, not only is it broken, it's infected. And it's about into the break of your bone, so we either open it up and scrape your bone, or we put you on intravenous antibiotics. I said, no, I can't do that. I got to preach Sunday. He said, all right, then we're going to give you a huge regimen of antibiotics, and we're going to do it in both cheeks. I was smiling for months. Well, after all of that, I was getting a little bit tired, but then we get sued for $3.6 million by an atheist. And then my name is put in newspapers, Civil Beat, Star Advertiser, with this false stuff. I think, what are they doing? Why do they allow this? Now I'm feeling terrible because the church is getting pulled in, and some people are receding from New Hope saying, whoa, these people are a little strange. While that's going on, the SB1 comes up, and we testify, and we get nailed again. And then right after that, we started the musical Les Miserables, and so I don't know why I said yes to learn 31 songs. But after it was done, of all the people, I was the most miserable of them all. And it just happened like this for 6 years. And so this last summer, I had to go and make some decisions. I was just fried. And to just kind of open up the curtain a little bit, I didn't want the church to go through any more of that collateral damage because they were aiming at me, not the church, but the church would get nailed too. And I really felt that I had failed. Maybe I thought I shouldn't have tried to save the college. Let it go. Maybe I shouldn't have trusted the people where I did, or maybe I should have built a building much sooner when we were larger than building leaders and planting out churches and sending people out. But I really felt that I had failed in many ways, and so I thought, but what is done is done. And I didn't have any control. I couldn't control this atheist and the suit and the money, and all. I can't control the roof and what happens in satellites or what's going on or what people decide to do. I not only felt like I didn't have any control, I felt I was out of control. And I thought, now is the time. I've got to find an Elisha. I'm done. And so we started vetting people from all over the U.S. trying to see if we could find an Elisha. And I cried out to God. I said, God, you got to help me. And God just went silent on me. Ever have God just go silent on you? And I kept knocking on heaven's door. And there was no answer at the door. So I took the sabbatical this summer and just I had to go find out. So I went out into the desert and cried out to God. God, I don't know what to say. I was having anxiety, and it moved into depression, and fear started. In fact, whenever it was time for me to come back and speak, this fear came on me. I thought, what is going on? And I'd cry out to God. And again, outside is jovial, but inside, as soon as you go home, it's like everything implodes, and you're in darkness again. You got to try to get out of that. But I couldn't. So I cried out to God this last summer, and He wouldn't answer me. And I was depressed, and I said, God, why am I depressed? Finally, God answered me. Finally, one day I was praying, and God answered me, but I wouldn't like the answer He was about to give me. I said, God, why do I have anxiety and fear, and I'm depressed? Why? Why? And God says, you want to know why? I said, yeah, why? He said, because you're too selfish. I said, what? I've been zealous for the Lord God Almighty. Israel has torn down your altars. And I alone am left. He said, you're just too selfish. You're thinking too much about yourself. I never asked you to think about yourself. I asked you to think about the people I'm going to send. You serve them. I asked you to be a field general, and you've chosen to be a prisoner of war, because then you can sit in a cell and they serve you 3 meals a day. You don't have to do anything. I asked you to be a general, and you've lost your heart for war. I looked up to heaven and I said, excuse me, is there anyone else I can talk to up there? I know I'm talking to you, Father, but is the Son available? You see, what happens is when you succumb or surrender to that stuff, you become a victim and you submit to victimhood. Because I can't do anything. I'm out of control. None of this was in my control. There's nothing I can do. And you make yourself a victim. Listen carefully. Satan is a headhunter. Your mind is his battlefield, and your future is his trophy. He wants to steal and devour your future. And I was thinking wrong, and this is what God said. You're thinking incorrectly. You're thinking about yourself. You got bad psychology. What do you mean bad psychology? See, Matthew 6 says, the lamp of your body is your eye. If your eye is clear, your whole body will be filled with light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be filled with darkness. And if that light that is in you is darkness, how great shall that darkness be? And I was seeing things dark because my thinking was wrong. I was thinking about my comfort. What about me? I don't like this. I can't control anything anymore. And the Lord said, it ain't about you. I asked you to be an ambassador for heaven, and you became a prisoner of war. I asked you to be a field general, and you made yourself into a victim. Your thinking is completely wrong. You're thinking about yourself, and that has made you a victim. And then I realized, you think about it, any study of successful people, you'll find that there's an amazing ability for people to overcome almost anything. I mean, people can rise. We've heard stories where people have risen above circumstances. They do it all the time. Physical disabilities can't keep a person down. Hardships or failures are commonplace among those who have achieved much. We can rise above almost anything, but listen, there is one thing you can never rise above. And you know what it is? The one thing you can never rise above is the way you think. It's the quality of your thoughts. That's one thing you can never rise above, is the quality of our thoughts. If you're thinking poorly, you'll never rise above that, because your thoughts will stop you. Nothing in life will keep you down but your own thinking. That's why Matthew 6 says, the lamp of your body is your eye. It's the most basic of all keys. If you want a high quality of life, you better develop a high quality of thought. The way to improve your future is to improve the way you think about your future. And to a large degree, you are where you are because the way you think. In other words, it is the way we think that is the most important reason we are where we are in life. And God says, the way you're thinking has made you into a victim, Wayne, and depression is going to follow, and it sure did. You see, what I had done was I stopped fighting, looking out for myself, and without realizing it, I started surrendering. And here's what God told me. You can make yourself into a victim, or you can get back into the fight and fight for your mind, because your mind is not healthy. And I realized that's exactly what I had to do. God said, you got to fight to get back. You remember that old spiritual song, Joshua fit the battle of Jericho, Jericho? And when it said that Joshua fit the battle, it meant that he fit his mind for the battle. And when he was going to take Jericho, he had to do it with everything in him. He couldn't hesitate. He couldn't be ambivalent. He had to go for it. He fit his mind for battle. And God said, Wayne, you got to fit your mind for battle. It's not fit for battle. And if you talk to any athlete, if they hesitate in a contest, you're going to get injured. You can't hesitate. You got to go for it. And he said, the reason you're injuring yourself is because you're hesitating. And you need to change the way you think. And you must fight to get your mind back, because Satan is a headhunter. And your mind is the battlefield, and your future is going to be his trophy. And then I began to understand. I was praying on the floor, and the Lord sort of said like this, you got to draw a line, and this is where you've been languishing on this side. You have to step over the line and say, I will never go back again. I must never go back again and start thinking that way, because it shadowed my life. I cannot ever go back. I'm done. And never go back. Now, you're going to have to fight to stay free. You're going to have to fight to stay free. You're going to have to fight to stay free, because negative thoughts will come. Well, what about that? Well, what about what happened? And you say, no, I must go on. God gave Joshua the promised land after Moses died. He promised Joshua all the land of Israel. But even though God promised it to Joshua, Joshua still had to contend for every square inch of it. I need you to hear this. God has promised you and this church a wonderful future, but it's not just going to fall in our laps. We must contend for every square inch of it. Now, God, by His Spirit, is going to be right with us, but you and I have to fight to stay free from our past. So I drew the line. I actually drew a line in the carpet. I can still remember the yarn being parted, leaving a temporary mark there. And I got up and I said, I've got to step over this line and I must never return. And I stepped over that line. I did it physically. And I said to myself, I will never go back. I must fight to stay free. And everything changed. I mean, almost, not exactly immediately, but almost immediately, I started to see things differently. I started getting excited for the future, what God had in store. I looked forward to getting back. Everything changed. It was like everything switched. It was an epiphany. And it was right here, the way I was seeing everything, I made myself into a victim. Satan is a headhunter. Your mind is his battlefield. Your future is his trophy. I stepped over the line and things began to change in my life, my perspective, everything. Well, why do I share all of this? Reason is this. There's some of you that need to draw a line. Satan has caught you in the web of victimhood. Sister, it could be you, something that happened in your past, and you're being tethered to your past, and you can never walk into your full future if you stay a victim to what happened. Might have been an event against your will. Could have been something that took place, that you've been a victim. And you need to draw a line and step over it once and for all and never go back. Some of you have had a loved one pass away and you are stuck in the past. You need to draw a line and step over it and say, Lord, I can't go back there. I'm not going to languish in that lifestyle that I had. I was a victim to that. And you would be fighting with anxiety, and you're going to fight with fear, and you're going to fight with depression. Some of you brothers, you got to draw a line because of a failure that you were a part of. And it's been haunting you and stalking you. Some things that you have done, or maybe done to you by a boss or some person, an inheritance that you didn't get, and you're just stuck. You're a victim. And you're going to excuse away everything that happens in your life because of that. You're a victim, and you need to step over that line and say, I will never be that way again. That's the only way you're going to apprehend your future. You understand? God has given us a wonderful future, but you got to contend for it. You got to fight to stay free from the past. Otherwise, it will suck you right back in like a vortex. And it'll capture you and you'll feel victim. And then you have everybody to blame. And that's exactly what Elijah did. And that's exactly what Job refused to do. And so I share it because I think sometimes God has me go through stuff so that as I share it with you, you go, you know, that's what I'm going through. And we can do it together. Because see, I made a commitment to do life with people here in New Hope. Not to shield you from the real life. That this is sort of me in private and then you see me here in public. No, it's got to tie together. And we got to see that you're not the only one going through those things. See, Elijah said, I'm the only one going through this. And you'll feel like that. You'll feel like I'm the only one struggling with this. No, you're not. There's a bunch of us. But if we can see that there's light at the end of the tunnel, God will give us courage to navigate that journey, and we'll do it together. So I want to, in closing, share 3 things. Number 1, I want to say thank you to the many of you that just stuck by the stuff. When there was ambivalence and people saying, is Wayne leaving or is he going or what's going on? And people are migrating, your friends are going, you think, well, what do I do? But you stayed with it even though we came here and there's like 0 parking. You got to park in Hawaii Kai to get here or on Kauai and catch a plane. Thank you for staying with it. But the second thing I want to say is this. Our best run is ahead of us. I am convinced and just stoked. I cannot tell you how excited I am when we're drawing up some of the designs and the structure, and I think not of the structure, but what it'll do for us as we just catch a vision for that and move with being propelled by that, mobilized by that into the future. I am just stoked to no end. But the third thing I want to say is there's some of you that need to draw a line and step over it. For some of you, today water baptism is like a line that you're going to say, I'm going to die to the old, and I'm going to, in public, say, I'm going to serve Jesus Christ. I'm not going to waffle through this anymore. I've been waffling about this, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to be ambivalent, because that's when the enemy comes to injure you. But I'm going to step across that line and say, Jesus Christ is the one that I'm going to serve, and I am thrilled to do that and identify with Him. And boy, I tell you, when that happens, the resources of heaven just open up. Your future becomes clear. You start getting things right. It's like a divine chiropractic adjustment. Click, 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 click. But that doesn't happen until you step over the line. There's some of you sisters need to step over the line. Brothers, you need to step over the line, and you know why. But you need to put that behind you and say, I'm going to be new in Christ, and it's time. This is our run, folks. We don't have another run. We got to do it with all our hearts. So here's what I want to ask you to do. As you leave this place, whether it's that door or any of these doors, there's a threshold there that you're going to step over. I want you to imagine that's the line. And when you step over it, you say, that's it. I'm going to be a new person. I'm not going to ever return to the old way, because it's not God's way. And in the end, only God's way is going to work. I'm going to get back to Jesus, and I'm going to identify with Him. And I promise you, your future begins to clear up. You start to see things. But if you're waffling, it's always going to be fuzzy. You're always going to struggle with anxiety. Fear is going to come in, argumentation, and then depression. It's not worth it. You don't want to languish on the other side of the line. It's time for us to step over it, because God has so much for us individually and as a church. And so those thresholds are like that line. I want you to say, I'm stepping over this. I'm never going to be that old person again. God's going to do a miracle in my life, and I'm going to follow Him with all my heart. I want all of us to be able to do that. Some of you today, you may need to draw the line of faith and step over a line of faith, and that you've never received Christ really before. I mean, you've talked about Him, but you've waffled around the lordship of Christ for fear that someone might identify you with Jesus. It's time you draw the line of faith and say, I'm going to step over this line of faith, and it's my heart to identify with Christ. I'm going to do that with courage. I'm going to be, brothers, I want to say we need to be men about it and step over that line and not just tiptoe through the tulips. You need to step over that line and say, I will be a man of God. I tell you, when the devil sees that, he stops and takes notice, because he knows that all of a sudden you've invited the Holy Spirit's protection and you're going to walk with courage, and that threatens hell. But not a lot of men do that. It's time for us to draw a line and say, I'll be one. And you watch what God will do. He will give you the confidence and the courage to be men of courage and men of war. And then you take as your inheritance the future that God has for you. You lay hold of the future that God has intended for your family. You're the man, you're the head of the home. If you don't do it, who's going to do it? You do it. And so some of you need to step over the line of faith today, and I want to give you that opportunity. Some of you at baptism need to step over that line and say, I'm not going to waffle through this. I'm going to identify with Christ. And a lot of you need to step over that line of your past and say, I know that's a past, but it's not going to hold me victim anymore. I need to lay hold of my future. And you've got to get over that line. So let's be a people who say, I'm going to take a hold of my birthright. I'm not going to sell it like Esau. I'm going to lay hold of it. And I'm going to be a person who receives what God has for me all the way. Let's be those people. Can you say amen? Yeah, let's do it.